Hello, my wonderful UW students. How are we doing today? I'm so excited to be coming to you on week 5. So you are almost done with this course. I know we move really quickly. I had to take 16 weeks and move that into 6. So thank you for your hard work. I really, really appreciate it. So with that said, I don't want to waste any of your time because I know that you're really busy. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we're going to go to the Canvas course. So with that, my friends, I want to focus on of what we're going to be doing this week, okay? So in week 5, you're going to be focusing on public anthropology, globalization. You, of course, have your forums, your key term forums, your discussion questions at the end of each chapter. Then you have your student questions. I love reading these. Thanks for thinking about anthropology in depth and really questioning some of the practices we have, and then having that dialogue with your colleagues. I feel like this is so important, especially because we can't be in person. And then you have your writing assignment as well, which I'll dive into a bit more. But let's start with your public anthropology, okay? So as you know, I always give you a PowerPoint to go along with your reading. I hope that these have been really helpful. But what we want you to take away from this chapter is that there have been problems with communicating findings from academic anthropology to the wider public. But I think that this is across all disciplines, right? When you hear anything about how it's difficult for scientists to communicate their findings, or you don't know how to use science and policy, stuff like that, that's what public anthropology is all about, right? How can we communicate what our findings, what we do to the broader public, okay? And so that's really what has helped define this kind of public anthropology, okay? It's also all about public engagement in anthropology. So have y'all heard about things like citizen science? Okay. We also have citizen anthropological science because one anthropologist can't go observe an entire community of individuals. So sometimes we have to work with others and even non-anthropologists in order to have this kind of citizen science approach towards solving these broader, these wider issues and understanding them better. Okay. So really, it's also about how when we work with humans, when we understand behavior, how can we also be agents of change? Okay. And so in this chapter, you read about a lot of anthropologists who are agents of change. And that's them taking their research really to the next level, to this public sphere, and then communicating that out. So with that, they talk about these books that folks have written who are actually not anthropologists, and they've done really well. What you need to know about academia writ large, or in the broader scope, is that all faculty members go up for this thing, if they're lucky, called tenure or continuing contract. And in order to have that, you have to publish a lot in advanced journals, okay? So for example, if you look up my name, if you search Danielle Jensen-Ryan, I come up on Google Scholar. Okay, and then on Google Scholar, you can see all of my research articles that I have published. And so if you're ever having a hard time falling asleep one night, just open up one of these and read it. No, I'm really proud of these, but it's a ton of work, right? And this is taking your work to that next level. Will read these. Maybe even some of you will write these someday if you want to become a professor. But anyways, we have to have these publications as points on our curriculum vitae or vita CV, which is kind of like a bigger resume. And then we get points for these from our institution of learning, from our higher education institution. And this helps us get tenure and continuing contract, which means we don't have to up our contract every year with the institution, but instead we just have a continuous contract. But that makes it really hard because we have to publish in these huge in these really peer-reviewed scientific journals, which means we can't write kind of larger books for fun, right? So one research article that I've really been wanting to write, which you read at the beginning of the semester, something about this was the NASA-RAMA, right? Which are Americans spelled backwards. So it's an article about Americans from the 1950s. However, we need an updated article or book, right, on Americans now. If any of you want to write this with me, please let me know. I'd love your insight. But that would be something more fun, which may not be able to be published. So it's like, how do I divvy up my time right? Where maybe that would be a really fun read that lots of people would look at. It may not get me where I want to be in my career. So, anyways, they talk about that. They talk about cultural hegemony and in academia. That's what that is. We have to focus on things that are peer reviewed and scientific, which is good too, right? And so, when you do read books like Guns, Germs, and Steel, know that that's not peer reviewed, right? That's not peer reviewed by scientists like myself who have published more than a dozen research articles. That's just published. Anyways, I could go on that all day. Okay. So also anthropologists love to help others. If we're going to, research something, and a lot of times we research contentious issues, why not take it to that next level to then provide recommendations on how to do good, right? But again, we're scientists, we're anthropologists, we're not celebrities, and so a lot of times that's not really recognized, in academia, which is another way to have this cultural hegemony in academia. Okay. So again, all you need to know for public anthropology, it's really great fields, interface between anthropology as an academic discipline and then the broader public. Okay, so how do we kind of put those two together in order to influence public problems and address them in ways that are effective from the ground up? Again, you've heard me talk about this the entire semester. Anthropologists focus on bottom-up approaches towards solving issues and problems instead of large, like Millennium Development Goals or large, huge national policies. That is not what anthropologists do, because we want it to emanate from the culture, from the community itself. Okay. And so anyways, you read about this. We don't need to go into these slides as much, not exactly important to what we need. But again, all you need to take away from this chapter is that academic anthropologists long for more greater social engagement and also public recognition, right? But again, the structural support, we don't have that from institutions of higher learning. And so it makes it really difficult to focus our time on that, okay? So that was your first chapter that you read. You only had 2 this week. The other one was about globalization, okay? So we're going to get to the 5 scapes of globalization. Glocal, I don't know if you've heard about this yet, but it's kind of this local, globally local form of consumption. We're going to talk to a bit more, okay? Also terms like globalization, neoliberalism, and neocolonialism were in this chapter. So we'll go into those a bit more as well. And then kind of what are the implications of globalization for anthropology? If we want to take this local approach, how do we study something from multiple different sites, okay? And so what we're going to get into with globalization is a thing called multi-sited ethnography, okay? So instead of an anthropologist like myself studying one cultural, like one group of people, right, and everything having to do with that group of people, now anthropologists can focus on an issue. Okay, so for example, I could focus on gold mining or something throughout the entire world and then focus on that issue and then research all the things having to do with gold mining in areas around the globe. So that would be taking a very globalized approach toward anthropology by focusing on an issue rather than a specific population. Does that make sense? That's where we kind of can study globalization as anthropologists, okay? So it's picking an issue rather than maybe a group of people. Okay, so what does globalization mean? Well, it's the intensification of worldwide social relations which link distant localities in such a way that local happenings are shaped by events occurring many miles away and vice versa. We are impacted by globalization all the time. And in your second writing assignment that you're going to do this week, you actually have to describe how you and your community are impacted by globalization. So I can't wait to read what you have to put, okay? So we're going to go into these 5 different scapes of globalization, okay, in this chapter. The ethnoscape, okay, so for example, tourism, that's the flow of people. So think of like ethnicity is people, like groups of people, and ethnoscape is how people flow across those different boundaries. So like, for traveling. So for example, my nephew right now got into Rome today. Okay, so so if we were to follow Liam, right, we could follow the flow of Liam across all these different scapes. You yourself has probably been part of an ethnoscape. through travel. Technoscape, flow of technology. Are you connecting with people around the world? Probably. Ideoscape, okay? Flow of ideas, okay? Are you going around the world like missionaries do and sharing a message, right? Or a mission, okay? Financescape, flow of money across political borders, okay? So, for example, mining wealth, resource wealth, all of the different types of wealth and how those flow across are forms of globalization. And then mediascape, okay, and the flow of media. So, for example, do you watch football, European football, right? Or do you watch other like Eurovision, things like that? And then how Americans also influence worldwide in a globalized manner with our media. Okay, so these are separated out by Arjun Appadurai, a very famous individual. However, all of these things are connected as well, and it's so hard to differentiate them because look, we would be talking about mediascape, and then we'd have to talk about technoscape, right? And how technology informs and influences media and the transaction, the flow of media across. So please know these different terms, right? And what they mean, and that will be good enough for your exam. Okay. So, globalization is the adaptation of global ideas into locally palatable forms. Okay. For example, you can take um, uh, the example given in your book is this salsa dance, right? And how it's this global form of dance. However, there are all these different types of local styles. Okay. Dance is a great way. Talking dialects are a great way. So it's taking a global idea again and then just incorporating it into the local. Okay. And then the lifestyle that you have are the ways in which individuals perform various social identities. Okay. You're going to be talking about this in your community paper. You're going to be focusing on a community that you are a part of, an event that you are a part of. I want you to be thinking about what kind of lifestyle do you purport in that identity. So, for example, what I would talk about in my paper would be maybe Cheyenne Frontier Days, right? And how the lifestyle in Cheyenne during that time is very focused on this Western and maybe even eccentric Western dress, right? But that's what we do for the last 10 days in July. That's the way that we incorporate this lifestyle in our local community. Okay. And then just advantages and disadvantages, globalization. Y'all have focused on this in other courses. Again, globalization, great, maybe for the economy, for crowdsourcing so that we can get to know other cultures, so we can travel, okay? But then disadvantages, obviously, COVID-19 was a huge epidemic that we had due to globalization. Also, just the racism prejudice that we have toward other even continents can be really detrimental to their societies. So anyways, lots of things to think about here, lots of things to lots of examples were also given in your textbook. So I really, really hope that you enjoyed that. Okay. Now, finally, the thing you have this week is your writing assignment, which is your second writing assignment. As always, please follow the format that you did before. It was really great. Most of you really followed that and didn't miss any points. But now I want you to focus on your community and anthropology, okay? So in part one, you're going to describe your community, okay? Where did you grow up? Or if it were a lot of places, that's great too. Let me know that, okay? And then I want you to pick a community that you know well and appreciate. This could even be a place that you fell in love with when you studied abroad. So this discussion should include what community you chose, why you chose this community, and one kind of festival or event that your community holds, okay? Then I want to talk about how your community is impacted by globalization. So here I would talk about how Cheyenne is maybe impacted by globalization, okay? I would talk about if my community is stratified or egalitarian. You might have to go back to those terms, okay? I would talk about how power and wealth is garnered in the community, okay? And then I want to know if folks have different access to resources in your community. So that's the second part of this writing assignment. Your third, just like your other writing assignment, you got to have two research articles, okay? You have to find two, and I want you to think critically about how you yourself, in again, maybe that local way, could improve your community. Okay, so say that you write about how power and wealth in your community is stratified and how it's stratified by gender and how there needs to be more gender equity. Great. Find me a couple of research articles on gender equity and write about how you could take, what recommendations they have in those articles and how you could implement them in your own community. Okay. I love this paper. I love to have you think critically about the community that you love. Okay, because a lot of us are may seem like things are all hunky dory in our communities, but really there's lots of work to do. There's lots of that public anthropology, that engaged anthropology, that applied anthropology that we can help other humans with if we take that active role. Okay. So with that, thank you so much for watching this video. I really look forward to your second reading assignments, and I'll get those graded as soon as I can. And then next week is the last week with me. So let me know if you want to meet. As always, email me, Canvas message me, hang in there. You can do anything for a couple weeks, okay? So please, please work hard, get your stuff in, and we'll rock out for the rest of the semester, okay? Thanks so much. Hope you're doing well and talk to you later.